Welcome back to the Voices of Religion. I'm talking with Nicklaus Suino today, who has written a terrific book, and it is The Trading Secrets of the Japanese Martial Arts, Budo, Mind, and Body. Well, on the cover right away we see a very imposing sort of presence of a sword in a hand and a great sense of this being from another era. Does the applications of this form of martial arts, do they really apply to somebody living in an urban center who is not likely to be going about their lives and be challenged by someone else? I mean, how does it really translate and apply in the idea of making your way in the world today?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's no practical application for the techniques. We don't walk down the street with swords. So that's not an aspect of the training for us. It's definitely applicable in the sense that it's physically challenging. So it helps to make you healthy. Strong legs and arms, strong back, good aerobic training. It helps to improve your concentration, mental focus. It helps to create a kind of mental stillness. Judo, which is the name of the type of swordsmanship I teach, is considered a form of moving meditation, very much like Tai Chi. And so it helps to calm you and helps you to be more alert in a relaxed manner. And finally, because of that kind of stillness that you get, I think it helps to put one in better touch with the universal, if you will.
Right. I want to bring up some pictures that we had to come up while we were talking in the first segment, and just have you tell us what we're looking at. This one here. Now, so is this the classic sword that we're seeing here? That's
a posture that's in the middle of several kneeling forms that we practice. And what the swordsmen do is move from a position of defense to a position of attack, and that's why the sword is overhead, ready for the finishing cut.
Got it, got it, okay. And is that something that, like, how early on, okay, well, you can tell us here. Now, is this where the opponent is introduced, or is this somebody and waiting for their turn in a lesson?
If I have this correctly, that's me performing a form during a teaching session. Okay. And there's at least one student, actually many in that case, watching the form. Okay. You know, it's an art form that's taught by watch, do, right, you know, refine, and so that's what's going on there.
What about the weight of the sword? I mean, and I'm wondering about what age someone would have the actual sword introduced. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what age would somebody come to start? Would they be 8, 10, 12, 14? What sort of age? And what about women in the sport?
Oh, very good questions. Typically, there isn't the kind of brain development that would be helpful to train in this martial art until you're 16 or 18.
Okay, that's interesting.
We do have kids that do it, and occasionally one will do very well, but for the most part, we wait till they're a little older. Okay. We do have women in the art, and in fact, it's encourage. Women are some of my best students. Really? They seem to be a little bit more able to pay attention to detail and not quite so concerned with victory as you might imagine a lot of young men are.
So on the component that I associated with more sort of like the chess moves of, you know, watching whether best to mirror your opponent or to disrupt, maybe women are a little faster at studying some of those signs, or by that stage are most people so good because they've been through so many years of training that the gender differences are sort of evened out?
I think that's absolutely right. They even out over time because you're going through a system that kind of helps standardize and refine your thinking.
How do a lot of the men in the class feel when there's women in the class? Is that something that's okay? Because, you know, this is considered by some a very traditional male art form or form of defense. Do you call it within, when you say martial arts, I mean, I think of it as an art form because today that's how we look at it, but when you're actually doing it and in it, do you think of it as more of a sport than an art form?
Not at all. There is a sport component, which is called kendo. And that's where people put on the outfit that you see on the cover of my book, and they try to strike each other with a bamboo sword to score points. That's not what we do. What we do is much more formalistic, and it's definitely an art form.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me, how did you first hear about the martial arts? What was your first connection to it, and what made you go from hearing about it or being interested in it to walking through the door of a place and saying, I want to sign up?
Well, I can tell you what drew me to it. I was 8 years old, and I was relatively small for my age and probably a little more talkative than I should have been, and I just felt like it would be something that would help me calm down, maybe defend myself if need be. And so I started in Judo when I was in 1968, when I was 8 years old, and I've never looked back. I've been involved in lots of martial arts, and next year I'll celebrate my 40th anniversary involved in martial arts.
When you say you started in judo at 8 years old, what is judo in its own sort of form? Like how, do you know what I'm saying? Like martial arts covers a lot of variety in there, and I think judo is the word that most people are familiar with, but what are some of the differences?
So judo is a throwing and grappling martial art. Okay. You wear a heavy cotton uniform and the parties grasp each other's uniforms and try to throw each other down using sophisticated throwing techniques, or try to hold each other down. Okay. It's a sport. It's also an ancient martial art, and it's great for balance, it's great for physical fitness, and it's much more combative than the iaido, which is the swordsmanship we're talking about. Okay,
that's interesting, because you would make the first assumption that if there was a sword, it was more combative than without the sword, but in fact it's the reverse.
You know, and maybe that was true. These sword forms descend from martial arts, right? They were originally warrior arts, and they were used on the battlefield. But nowadays, as we talked about before, there's no application for that.
Well, when we come back, I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about the history of martial arts in the sport, and do most people that are very serious about it today, do they study that history, and do they spend time, you know, sort of learning the cultural ramifications and evolution over time in the different applications and societies that have embraced it? And then I might ask you about how it is internationally seen as opposed to just here in North America. So we'll talk about that when we return. Please stay with us. There's more on the Voices of Religion straight ahead.